God bless the new founding fathers and GTAA, a podcast reborn. All right.
Absolutely.
Although, honestly, you dressed for this gag so much better than I did.
Thank you. I watched all of the movies in a row without stopping, so I feel like this is just my normal makeup now. Just woke up and put it on without even thinking.
Right. Get up, go to the bathroom.
Flag face makeup and go. Actually, the makeup artist who did this design on my face is a friend of mine named Robert Fritz. He owns Magic Parlor in Salem, Mass. And I just had to redo it. It was so much fun. It was like these flags don't run, this colors don't run was the idea. And then they would continue the paint all the way down the front of my shirt. And then just before, they would pour water and make it all. Yeah, it was also 2 a.m. So that was really 2 a.m. outside in November was really great, getting covered in wetness.
Yeah. So just for anybody who didn't read the description, KT was briefly in one of the Purge movies in Purge election year, as you can see now as the flag-faced killer in part of that movie. And you told some of this story when you were on the post game, like a while ago, like back when when the strike first started. That's kind of what you were primarily talking about at that point. But and sorry,
no worries.
Worried that the cat was going to knock something over on the other end of the table.
Oh, God, the worry. I'm every day of my life. I have 3 of them, and I'm just, please don't break everything.
Fair. Yeah. So you were telling some of those stories then, and it is like just the fact that it was a Purge movie and some of the stuff that was like going on IRL around you was happening is like pretty funny from what I remember of the story.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those movies where it just you had to laugh because it kept getting stranger and weirder and more like, are we actually in, like, where does it end? Where does the set end? We were filming in Rhode Island in a really questionable portion of Rhode Island where, you could not have to dress it up too much to make it look like it was the middle of a city in the middle of a purge. And during my scene, things would happen, like there'd be gunfire, except it wasn't our set because we weren't shooting in that point, and people would just be like, go with it, it's production value, it's fine, it's so far away, just let it roll. But by far my favorite of the whole situation, because like I said, it was the middle of November. Actually, it was originally in the summer, but we had to do pickup shoots in November, so what most made it in was shot in November. So when we picked the costumes, it was the middle of the summer, and being in what was basically a Wonder Woman bustier that they tore the like S off of, or the W off of, and then like high-heeled shoes and like barely underpants, it was like, oh no, it's fine, it's like 60 out. It's cool. Became, it is now -20. You're covered in fake blood. You're good. Like, just try not to pass out. I did find out. I found out that you could vomit from being too cold. Fun little fact there. And then because the neighborhood we were in.
Speaking of purging.
Speaking of purging, it was just all on brand at that point. Was that the copper pipes underneath what was holding got stolen one night.
Oh, wow.
So there was no heat even in holding. And it's just like, because we're in the middle of an actual purge and we just happen to be filming.
Yeah. So I know to prepare for the stream, you actually binged all of the Purge movies. You watched them back to back. I've seen all of them over the course of the last couple of years. The only 2 I've seen in the last week were the Purge Anarchy and the First Purge. But the First Purge I just finished watching like half an hour ago because I had to cross that off the list. And it may be my favorite single detail about the series that canonically the Purge starts in Staten Island.
I know. I do feel like that's pretty on brand. If we were like, look, they're gonna kill everybody on Staten Island, it's fine. Nobody will stop that. That's Staten Island most of the time, really. I did also like that because it was Staten Island, they have Marissa Tomei as the doctor who invents the whole like she was also the mom in Pete Davidson's Kings of Staten Island. Like she's ready for a Staten Island movie. If it's Staten Island based, she's available. That one was hard to watch. That one got the worst fan reviews.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they all get about the same. The critics are always at about a 48 to a 55 with the Purge. Like some like it, some don't. But audiences will swing around. The last one that just came out got good, really, really good audience reviews, but made the least amount of money of them all. I think probably because, as you were saying, like you saw it as the first movie since COVID.
Yeah, exactly. I think I was like maybe at my immunity date for the second shot, or a couple days later. I was like, you know what? I haven't been able to do it in a year and a half. I really want to go to the theater. What's in the theater? The Forever Purge. Sure, I'll see that.
It's your American right to see it.
Exactly. Granted to me by my government.
Granted to me by my government, right?
It is actually really, I was thinking about a video I remember watching, obviously, before that, where that was sort of like a weird convergence of two very different, like two culture war things you don't expect to happen at the same time, which is this like video during like the COVID lockdowns from Staten Island, where it's like a bunch of people who you wouldn't necessarily think would be big masking advocates, but I guess this was like the right, time in it that a lot of people were, who are like yelling at some dude in the grocery store for not wearing a mask. And it's like, and it's just like the most Staten Island possible way of doing it. It's like they kind of reminded me of The Sopranos when they have the intervention for Christopher and they all just beat him up at the end.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm sure the Forever Purge suffered from the fact that like people, anybody who wasn't going to movies, like basically still, like was just barely starting to go to movies at that point. Like I'm sure, I went to it. Yeah. As you say, it's the first movie I'd seen, after lockdown, but I'm sure like a lot of people like took longer than that.
Yeah. I think I said to you, I didn't go until like a year later and I saw Everything Everywhere at Once, but like, yeah.
Which is, to be fair, like a much more awesome movie to be your first movie back.
I mean, it could have easily have been anything. I think it was my birthday and that was out that weekend and I got lucky because that is a superb movie.
So good. Yeah, and that would be that'd be such an amazing theater experience, if like
well worth it.
Yeah, I mean, if that was like, you haven't seen a movie on the big screen since March 2020, and so it's been whatever it was at that point, 2 years or so, and that's the first one. That's actually kind of amazing. But
yeah. Do you think that these movies are better on screen or in a theater? Because I do feel like they do have a good amount of like theater vibes to them. You're going to see that violence, that gore, everything really, really big.
I can see that. I mean, it's hard for me to judge because the Forever Purge is actually the only one I did see in a theater. So I had never seen. When did the first movie come out?
2013.
2013. Okay. Yeah.
Having just watched them all, I'm right.
You have the details in your head. That's great.
Do you know it cost $3 million and it made $91 million, and that's why there will be Forever Purges. Like they're gonna flog this horse right down the.
I can see that too because the first one was the one that was most
one set just in that house. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's a little bit of the yeah, it's like the kind of the same reason that like Night of the Living Dead was so cheap to make, that like you're basically just in a house the whole time.
Yeah, and it did have Lena Headey, who I don't think she was quite yet in Game of Thrones, and Ethan Hawke, but Ethan Hawke I think might be friends with Jason Blum because he continually winds up in their stuff. You know what I mean?
So he might have come cheap for
He
that.
might have just been like, hey, for the fun of it. Although the Forever Purge, the one that you saw in theaters, is their first going back to like getting a pretty big cast, and they got most of Westworld in there. But yeah, they did again start to bring in namer actors, and they've already greenlit the 6th one.
Of course they have, yeah.
Of course they have.
Yeah. Why would you stop? Yeah. So I hadn't seen, for the years after. Like, I'm not totally sure why, because it took me like until either late 2020 or early 2021 to watch the first one. I mean, I think I don't know. I think there was I think that might be like a little bit left over from like kind of my reaction to the era of like a certain kind of over the top violent horror movie that didn't do much for me, them like the sort of Saw, that kind of era,
you're like
right?
Eli Roth kind of, torture porn, where the point is just to show you something violent and not really to put it together.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that like maybe I had to like kind of a lingering reaction to that made me not want to check out The Purge. And then during COVID, like, whatever, during, somewhere in the long months of not going outside, I was like, you know what? I'll watch The Purge.
Throw it on. Give it a try. Do you know, it's interesting because I was reading an old NPR review of the very first Purge. And they bring up a point that I think is worth noting. And they say that it's a pretty decent like horror movie. It's fun. It's an hour and a half. But is it trying to borrow prestige on what is just basically a violent movie by trying to make it seem a little bit like, oh, it's a thought experiment about American politics?
I could see that. Yeah. I mean, I think that the idea that there's any kind of deep thought going on here is probably a little much. I think what is true, right, is that there is some like just subtle as a jackhammer political commentary throughout like all of these movies, right? Like,
and you can kind of boil each one down to a sort of like specific, this one's immigration, this one's gun rights, this one's Black people's rights, like it kind of fizzles into a specific direction.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about it while I was watching the First Purge today. And okay, so what year did that one come out?
2018.
Okay, I was pretty sure because the only reason I was pretty sure it was like post 2016 is because of the pussy grabbing line.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, okay, all right, I know like what the minimum date is that this one came out.
And that was an interesting one too, because it's the first time they make James DeMonaco, the writer and director of the first three, get a different director because of the all Black cast. So they have a Black director working on this as well.
Yeah. So yeah, that's true. I mean, the only white people in the First Purge, like who have speaking lines, who aren't just like Klansmen or something, are
the administrative people in the office with Marissa Tomei kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And like I don't know, the president has like 4 lines, and
yeah,
you're right, Marissa Tomei, but like there's no. It is kind of remarkable how little representation we got in this movie.
They did the same thing with the Forever Purge. They had a Latin director working on that with DeMonaco. So I'm curious, like, is the 6th one going to go in another direction, or will he bring back to directing it? Not entirely, like, having watched them all in a row, I really don't feel like you suddenly feel like, oh, wow, this is a different director. Like, the reins have been taken out, probably because James is on set working with them at the same time. But it's interesting to note that they did wind up doing that.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. Yeah, I definitely would not have been like, oh, I wonder if somebody else did that movie. It feels different because it didn't feel different to me.
It did not start to feel different.
Yeah.
Somebody's asking in the chats who that director is. You got to look him up on IMDb. He hasn't done very many other things, but he's worth looking up. I had written down. I have like 12 pages of notes. I want to say that I took this many notes so that I could stay sane while just plowing through all the movies. I'm like, yes, the data. It's fine. It's research. We're going.
So you were basically the Marissa Tomei character in the First Purge. That that's look. I'm not just I'm just here for the data.
Because I feel like with any kind of movie like this, it's a premise. It's a kind of a like, well, what if, which is like basically every Twilight Zone movie. Like, what if? And you want to buy into the key premise of the story, which is, what if we decided to do this? And sometimes the data on it feels really strange. Like the second one opens up with them saying unemployment is below 5% because of the purge, and like it's below 5% right now.
Yeah, we clearly don't need a purge for that.
Like it's 3.8 right now. Well, what happened? But people are just like, yeah, you know what? Fucking purge. Do it. Go ahead, purge. Sure.
I mean, that is kind of amazing. Like in a weird way, I can almost suspend disbelief about people thinking that the purge was worth it because it did that, and then like there would be like some earnest little nerd trying to be like, no, but we've had it below 5% without a purge before. We don't need to do this.
Yes, I guess it's a testament to the spread of misinformation that the movie is constantly talking about. That people are like, but also, and this is what I kept coming to, is like the day after the purge. Can you imagine how much we spend as a country every year the day after
just on
the
like
purge?
cleanup.
Just on emergency rooms, like every single business is trashed, and we're like, no, but we kill all the poor people, so there's no problem with the government anymore because what was really costing us was social welfare. And you're like, is this just boogeyman stuff? Is this whole franchise just for scaring left-wing liberal people? I mean, I'm scared.
Well, I mean, it definitely does do that, and I was thinking about the division there because the first so first movie is 2014, 2015. Election year is the third
election year is 2016.
2016. Okay, yeah.
We come out like every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so that's interesting because it does feel to me like the last two, the First Purge and the Forever Purge, have are like the thing, if you go with what you just said about like scaring liberals, right? The stuff that liberals are scared about, like I think you can feel the shift a little bit. That like they're so the first three movies are made during the Obama era, so like people's image of what's like a scary right-wing thing, more or less, is still kind of defined by the Bush era. That like it's they sort of ostentatiously religious, like evangelical types who wear like suits and ties, and use American Revolution imagery, founding fathers, right? That's the so it's like a little bit of the Tea Party in there, maybe, but like basically like Bush era conservatives, and then the most recent two do both feel like they are shifting a little bit. It's like, oh, this is the Trump era stuff that scares liberals. That because even in the First Purge, I mean, I don't know, something about the fact that it's that makes sense because it's like, yeah, it's transitional, but it's like, even the fact that it's in Staten Island, there's a, and you have all of these, that's the first one where it's not just like, you've got the government, which is scary, and you have random citizens who are purging, but you have like, these like, it's, like I think you could definitely see that like this is made in the era when everybody's like, Richard Spencer, Charlottesville, all that stuff was like on people's minds a lot, right? That like you can, you've got all these like, fascist like militias in that movie, and then I mean the Forever Purge, it's the thing that the thing that brings the purge back at the beginning of the movie. They say that since in election year, the new founding fathers get voted out of office, then so the purge is abolished. But then the purge is reinstated because there's this huge wave of immigration, and there's all this like anti-immigrant xenophobia. So that's like a pure Trump era purge movie.
Yeah, so like they really yada over a lot of it, because if you look at the first several, you can create a timeline, you figure out where everyone is in relation to other things. It's 2034 by the time the senator gets over it. Like there's 25 years of purging before they abolish it, and then on the next one they're like, yeah, they bring it back. You're like, oh, is it the first one since they brought it back? Nah. How many has it been? Some.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that seems right. So I'm reminded the chat, we did just jump pretty much straight into talking about the purge. Didn't really properly introduce you at the beginning. So
I'm a big Patriots fan. No, I'm Ace Frehley from Kiss.
Nice. Yeah. So Kt is a actor, a filmmaker, I believe. Andy even made us a nice graphic for. Did he? Where is it?
He makes us a lot of nice graphics.
Here we go. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So this is the girl in the basement. You want to plug this? Absolutely,
especially on Halloween night. If you're looking for something to watch, it's about 32 minutes long. It's free on YouTube right now. You can find me on Instagram at Little Deadly Creature, or you can just type in Girl in the Basement into YouTube and it'll come up. It's the story of a woman who gets kidnapped by a serial killer, and on the day that he was going to kill her, he accidentally dies on top of the only exit out of the basement. And you now see her need to survive against all odds. It's kind of like we were talking earlier about how there's this really graphic type of horror movie that came out, I think, really right when I was maybe entering college. And so this was a lot of the horror movies that I was seeing, and people were constantly saying to me, like, Katie, why you like horror, but why do you, this is what horror is. And I was like, you can use that amount of violence to still tell a story. And so ultimately Girl in the Basement is an allegory for what it's like to be a person with anorexia. And the need to continue to consume yourself and go forward against what is clearly hurting you.
Yeah. Yep. And as so do check that out. As we mentioned at the beginning, briefly, Kt was in the exact in the same design face paint she's wearing now. Was in the Purge election year. And also, by the way, I should just say, for anybody who's concerned about this, she specifically checked with SAG, and this is fine. It's since there's no Purge movie out right now, this isn't promotion. That would be a problem with the strike.
And when you hear me talking about this movie, I'm borderline promoting. We should see it even that. No.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess like going back to the like taking these in order, the the first one was thinking about today, right? So you've seen it more recently than I have, but the first one actually is a little bit different from almost any of the others, like both in the single set thing like you were talking about, but also it's like following around a very different kind of character.
I think the first one is really kind of like that, like A Quiet Place. It says like, I have to protect my family against all odds kind of horror. Like, what would you do if you had to, or even Last House on the Left is like this, where you become the killer to save people, and kind of questions that. I think this happens with the Saw film too, although I'm really impressed with Purge for not having what happened to Saw, which is each subsequent Saw was a different writer and different director, and sometimes they had pre-existing scripts that got jammed into the Saw universe. Like this continues to go forward, but it gets out of that one location, and then it starts to get pretty formulaic with our, like, we're running around, you have to see a bunch of people purging in their existence, and always the last 20 minutes is like probably 4 pages of dialogue and like just a shit ton of action.
So Yeah, right. That's true.
And the body counts go up astronomically by the end. It's like 43 people die. It's like every 46 seconds if you do the math.
All right. Yeah, I mean so the first one is following around this guy who is not only a is, again, this is like the thing that makes me think, like, especially the first one maybe, is like really reflecting this kind of like the things that liberals find scary about conservatives in like the Bush era, right? Like it's because in a way the whole thing, there's this very like support our troops-esque thing about the purge, that he's like wearing a little pin or whatever to indicate his support, and he's listening to the radio. I kept thinking today, since I have since I moved to LA, I have the KLOS, the classic rock station, on all the time, and I just kept thinking about how the KLOS DJs would like handle the Purge Eve broadcasts and like taking calls and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you gonna be purging tonight? Well, they make like some joke about it.
Just wacky it on in. Absolutely. Or even Stephen Wright's DJing in Reservoir Dogs.
Yes.
That in.
Yes. Yeah, the 70s station. Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like Shaun of the Dead, where it feels so close to our reality that you're like, would I notice it start to happening, or would it be like just de rigueur?
Yeah, right. Like you're placed in this universe, so just be like, oh, okay, wait, what? Right? Like, wait, what are you talking about?
I mean, so many of our characters are traveling on the day of the purge. Like, get to your house days ahead. Why are you doing stupid shit like this?
Yeah, right. It's like, is this really? I mean, this only happens once a year. Has this really become that routine to you people, that like you're not, that you're not like locked down hours and hours before it starts?
Like the couple in Anarchy are just like, oh, we gotta go through downtown. Like, why did you have to?
Why would you do that?
Don't do that.
It's like,
and then yeah,
like just don't go anywhere that day. Like
plan ahead a little bit. If you have a cousin in Montreal, I don't know, visit them.
Right. But this guy in the first movie he's one of the things that makes it different from most of the other movies is that he's like pretty affluent. Like he lives in a really nice, he lives in a really nice house. Feels like, with the exception, it's like for some of the movies where they're following around multiple groups of characters, like some of the characters will be like middle class, but like by and large, like most of the later movies seem to prefer to like follow around people who are like in the projects. And which makes a lot of sense. But in this first one, this is this very affluent guy. He sells security, like home security systems, to protect people during the purge. That this is going to abound with spoilers for anybody who's never seen any of his movies. But he has, and it basically turns out the home security system is bullshit. That it doesn't really do that much, and there's something about it that, like, I was thinking about today, kept reminding me of like the like immediate post 9/11 era, when like the Department of Homeland Security would tell people that they should get like was it like that they should get like aluminum foil and duct tape in case there's like an anthrax attack.
It also made me think of the theater that we had to put on getting into airports.
Right.
9/11.
Totally.
And I had a friend who works in security at an airport, and he mentioned to me that for a really long time no one was trained to read the output of the body scan. It was literally they just scanned you to make sure.
It's literally just security theater that like this.
Security.
Yeah, that's I think enough you feel safe.
That's definitely what I felt like they were trying to say with Ethan Hawke's character, and the fact that the security system in his own house, he was like, look, 99% of the time people don't actually try and get in, so we could say 99% of the time our security system works.
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed like overwhelmingly clear that it's like the reason that he felt comfortable putting this bullshit security system in his own house, or whatever. I mean, I guess it did something, but it's like a group of people who are determined to get through it could like definitely get through it. That like is that he just was very unworried about anybody trying to, because that's not
it doesn't happen in his neighborhood.
Exactly. And when they do, right, it's basically because was it one of his kids like lets in like a homeless guy, because she's concerned about him, and then the purgers, who are these sort of I don't know, they kind of feel like they're sort of these like the whole vibe of like the purgers in that first movie, especially, they're like, I don't know, young Republicans from some extremely expensive college who are like really cutting loose for the night. They're going to go out and kill some poor people, and they even expressed to him in the dialogue, it's like, hey man, we wouldn't normally mess with you, right? But we really want to kill this guy though, so if you're going to shelter him, we are going to kill you anyway.
Yeah, I liked those. So The Purge is definitely a movie that relies on masks, scary, fun Halloween masks. And I love how in the first one they have that like rictus Republican white and male face. I mean, they go crazy as it goes on and it kind of verges away from that. But I thought it was really fun. I did also like the touch that the actor underneath that mask borderline has the same face.
Yes.
It was kind of like if you've ever seen First Power with Lou Diamond Phillip, the bad guy, who is a famous bad guy, a bunch of different character actors, takes off like a creepy mask, and his face is actually creepier than the mask. And you're like, oh, whoa, we shouldn't have used the mask. Just stick with your face. I definitely felt that about that purger. I was like, oh, yeah, you don't have to mask that guy.
yeah. I definitely see that. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, this is, again, yeah, I mean, not to belabor it too much, it does feel very like there's a lot of like there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the movie that's like reacting to War on Terror era things. And even the fact that this is the only one really of these movies that's like set in a nice suburb where everybody would normally feel safe.
I do think they're gonna move towards. I think you're pointing out the sixth one. Like they're gonna move towards having more of a diversity of characters that are across like poverty levels together inside America, trying to fight their way out because it's post Forever Purge.
Right.
But I think you're like seeing that you're seeing the place for the next script.
Yeah. Oh no, that's fair. So already by the time we get to number 2, the Purge Anarchy, which is also a little bit funny just because like it's a really lazy title. Like it doesn't
it's a lazy movie.
Like there's nothing like whatever. I watched it last night, I enjoyed it, but it's like I mean, the fact that the title is quite that lazy probably does say something about the movie, because it's like, yeah, you can literally call any Purge movie the Purge Anarchy. Like there's nothing that's more anarchistic about this one, like what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like all the rest of the titles, the sequels, have titles that are like specific to what goes on in
election
the movie.
Year tells you literally what year is it? Why, it's election year. Yeah. Although by the time I got to Forever Purge, I felt like if you had just asked me what I thought the next movie title was going to be, I'd have been like, I don't know, fuck it, Forever Purge.
That's true. I will say that if you watch the movie, we'll get to it, they do, like, it is descriptive, like, like it has a specific meaning in the movie, right? Whereas like it's not like there's a point in the movie where like, oh, this purge is like, this is the purge where anarchy is happening, like it's just like you could just call it the Purge 2.
Just Purge 2, Electric Boogaloo. That one for me felt like if you've ever played Resident Evil or Silent Hill, it felt like the longest cut sequence. Like I was so anxious because I kept being like, oh shit, when is it my turn to be on the controller next? Like, when is this gonna cut back in and I gotta kill Nemesis? Like,
Yeah. So I will say, just in terms of the way that the franchise kind of evolves from the first one, in the second one, we're already, we've already switched, sociologically, like one of the, there are like a couple of, there are basically two pairs of people that we're mostly following around early in the movie. One of them's one of them's like a couple, although, plot point that plays out in a very predictable way. They're like about to break up. And then the other one is a mother and daughter. And I guess the couple is like, they're like, I don't know, kind of, they feel sort of lower middle class-ish, but like in the, but the mother and daughter, the mother is a waitress. There's this whole point about how like her daughter was trying to like get her to ask for a raise on Purge Eve, and like she couldn't bring herself to do it.
yes.
Right. This is,
the raise is so that they can afford the medicine for their grandfather who's actively dying.
Yes.
And there's that commentary about like how the poor can't even get health care. And that's, that's another way in which we just kill people outside of the purge. We just kill poor people by not having them have health care.
Right. Yeah, right. Totally. And it's also where you introduce like one of the, like, okay, the first movie, I mean, I'm not going to say there's anything realistic about any of this, but
No,
it's like, but the first movie is like maybe the closest to something you can imagine. I mean, like if you don't ask too many questions about exactly how this could have gotten started or whatever, like it is, you can sort of see like this doesn't, it's like, okay, I can kind of see maybe how a society could have this where it's like basically, there's like, yes, officially this is just like anybody can kill anyone, whatever. Basically, this is a chance to go out and kill poor people, and this is, and like, but there's just like a lot of like street level vigilantism, and that's like it. Whereas the second movie, they've already brought in this like much more like another even more cartoonish level of evil, which is that they have the rich people who will pay people. So the grandpa does this. He like sells himself to some rich people because they do this, like, they like basically buy poor people to do like most dangerous game stuff, like on the grounds of their mansions.
Oh, it's like hunting in a stocked forest or something like that,
Right, what Dick Cheney was doing when he shot his friend in the face. I remember that was like one of those deals. It's like, they have like the birds that they're like releasing 2 seconds before you kill them. Yeah,
exactly like that. There's the people who want to do their American right and purge, but they don't want it to actually be dangerous or dirty or hard or anything.
yeah. No, which, okay, maybe I'm talked out of this a little bit. Maybe I can't actually imagine that happening.
Yeah, actively, yes, 100%. And I think in a way that if you think about how people will become nurses or housemaids or groundskeepers for people and like give their entire bodies and lives to this family that they take care of so that their kid can have enough money to not have to do this with their body. That's kind of another similar sort of saying there.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Like the poor just for consumption for the rich.
Yeah. And this is also the movie where you do get something that you get like versions of in one way or another in a few different ones of these, which is that you actually have like organized resistance. In this case, there's I don't know, it's all sort of like coded as like kind of like kind of like early 70s style black radicalism of a certain kind, right? You know, that like there's the guy who's doing his
the guy from The Wire who played Omar.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, Omar's coming, Omar.
Yeah. But it does have a Black Panther feeling about it.
Yeah, totally right. It's this very Black Panther-esque, you know, like they're doing you know, they're doing YouTube broadcasts and stuff to putting up flyers around the neighborhood. And, you know, I suppose technically everything they're doing is legal also, but, you know, it doesn't feel that way. I did keep thinking there's that one, you do get a few of these throughout the franchise, but there's that one example in the Purge Anarchy where there's the Wall Street guy who's been killed, and there's like the note that's pinned to him that you stole our pensions.
Yeah.
And I just kept thinking, it's like, yeah, I'll bet this is the one person who somebody's actually prosecuted for killing during the Purge. They like, you know, make up something where they accuse him of using a, you know, weapon that was above class 4 and you're not allowed to use it during the Purge or something like that.
Exactly, those class 10 bombs. Although I think it's a smart tie-in. Not to jump too far ahead, but in the First Purge, the one that's set in Staten Island, he manages to get like the denouement at the end for the main character is that they use a bomb that's above a class, I think they say class 10 or class 4 bomb. And they didn't yet put that rule in. And it's like, oh, that's why that rule is in.
Yeah.
It's a way to go back and put the franchise together. Like, you know, if you're going to watch all of them together, it's nice to know that they put any line through there for you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of Purge Anarchy feels like we're running through hallways. Like we're running from one place to another place to another place to another place. And it really feels like a video game. We're just trying to get to the last like level in the middle of Raccoon City.
Yeah, no, even as a movie, it probably felt more like something like the Resident Evil movies than the other ones did.
Although you do get to meet the character Leo Barnes, played by Frank Grillo, who's the only actor or character to jump. It's in two. He's in the second one and the third one. And he was in the scene that I was in. And I just want to say, awesome guy, really fun to act with. Nice. And like they're teasing that he might come back for the 6th one. So I do hope that that's true because I think he's really fun in these roles.
Oh, nice. So yes, that brings us to the one you were in, election year, which is, it's like, I mean, in a way that one and the First Purge, like, this is, you know, like I liked them way more than this is going to make it sound like I do, but it's like, there's something very odd about, like, you know, it kind of makes like, it's so much easier to suspend disbelief about the Purge when it's just like ordinary people who don't really even necessarily think that much about politics, or just kind of like, God damn it, this is happening. You know, this thing that's like, you know, what are they imposing on us now? Right. You know, so, and it's like a little bit strange, you know, once you actually start thinking about the idea that you're having this, like, you know, debate about whether or not to have the Purge. It's like, wow, really? You got people to go with the Purge?
Yeah.
That's, but yeah, this is, you know, although, man, I mean, as much as I do have trouble believing that the majority of people would get behind this, I will say I can imagine like a certain kind of like op-ed columnist, ghoul, talk radio person, like I can't imagine a lot of the people who actually would be like taking, like, have like pro Purge takes if it came up, you know, like, you know, I think it's like, you know, it's like, I don't know, I'm even thinking about like some people like I interact with on Twitter and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe they would actually be in favor of the Purge if this came up.
This is like being actually in favor of Swift's modest proposal. Like, no, but babies, they're delicious. Are you not? I mean, it solves itself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, you just kind of think about a certain kind of person who is like, whatever happens to, like, when like Gaza is being bombed or whatever, there's just like nothing they won't rationalize. That it's like, you could just imagine like the tweets and stuff. It's like, well, would you rather we had lots of crime all the time or like 12 hours? I mean, what's the, like, come on, like this, I know, libs, are going to cry about this, but I mean, isn't this really more humane?
Yeah. Can't you just get inside a bunker, get some guns? It's your fault you don't know how to operate a gun. Like, yeah, it does have, especially as you get further into the series, they start to nuance some of it becomes more vignette based. And the characters that you interact with, you're like, oh shit, like I kind of see this person like, God, actually, no, it is in Anarchy. The mother, her whole like, she's afraid from the second we see her because she exists in a world where, for women in the Purge, any slight that you give to any man during the year can be remembered on the night of the Purge.
Right.
So, and that guy breaks into her house and is like, this is my right. How dare you? Like, that was a really real scene for me where I'm like, no, there's no version of the world where this wouldn't be the first thing that happened with some people. This is incredibly upsettingly real.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that horror that's ripped from the headlines kind of feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the third one, election year, I will say, I think, I mean, maybe you can tell, definitely I'm sure the budget's going up every movie and whatever, but they have, like, it's, like definitely just some of the like lurid images of insanity on the street in that one, I actually thought were like some of the most striking ones in the whole franchise. Like,
the beheading scene in the alley.
Yeah.
And then I think there's also a lynching tree that people are dancing underneath. Yeah, they did a lot of work. This was in the I think it was shot in Rhode Island, but a lot of these people were from the Boston area, kind of like me. I'm from Western Mass. And so they got a lot of stunt performers and background actors, and they were just like, look, we're going to go inside this Party City bus, and we're going to make you look as weird as we possibly can. Then you're going to do some strange shit, and we're going to film it. And everybody was like, I've been waiting forever.
It's like it's the Rhode Island equivalent of that David Cross bit about the, the people with the signs, put me in your movie.
The call that I got was must speak Russian horror movie, and I was like, oh shit, all they needed to do was be like, must also be born in Queens. Like, is this a call just for me? Although I did audition for Bradley Cooper's girlfriend in one of his movies, and it was for a girl from Queens, and I was like, I'm from Queens. This is my Queens voice that I'm constantly hiding. And the director was like, just reading a little too Asian. And I'm like, but I'm Italian. Sorry, kid.
Wow. Right.
So it goes.
Yeah. So very Asian Italian, apparently. Yeah. So, I mean, this is, this is one where you also get expanding the mythology a little bit. You get this sort of, it's like the rich people's most dangerous game, like, pre-stocked private safe purges and the Purge Anarchy, but it's this sort of much they make it much creepier because it's like a religious ceremony. There's the new founding fathers midnight mass.
Yeah, it doesn't take much to make a church scene kind of creepy in the lexicon of a horror movie,
Not whatsoever. No, it's like already kind of 99% of the way there.
Yeah, you're like, ooh. And the guy that they had for the first kill, that like very vampire looking skinny guy with the blonde cut hair. Yeah, very severe. Good casting there.
Yeah. And that is definitely so the plot of the movie, there's this close election, and you have this, I don't know, like, I guess there's been some kind of crazy partisan realignment here because the new founding fathers have been in power forever, but like essentially the Democrat, whatever they're calling that, the is sort of this
voice of reason.
What's that?
This like voice of reason. This like, hey, maybe we don't kill everybody.
Yeah. I mean, really, if they wanted to make it more realistic for partisan dynamics in the U.S., she'd be like, well, maybe we could just have like a 6-hour purge instead of the whole 12.
Meet me halfway. What if we have people sign up like a Hunger Games?
Yeah. No, so it wouldn't be everybody. Yeah.
Not everybody's just one person from every location. We don't destroy every town. And you can see this is the thing where like when you have to compromise with somebody who's so far off in Lunaticville, you wind up accidentally having a purge.
Yeah, no, that sounds right. That the Democratic alternative to the purge would be the Hunger Games.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, look, I'm not some extreme purge abolitionist. I just think could we just scale it back to a Hunger Games? Yeah, and she feels like the essentially Democratic candidate, like, I mean, it does speak to what you were saying at the beginning about, how, like a lot of this is definitely targeted at scary liberals. And it's like, this is also like, this is the voice that like a good lib will find reassuring in all of this, right? That this sort of, she kind of feels like she was kind of feels like, I don't know, her dad is John Kerry and her mom is Elizabeth Warren, I mean, like she's that kind of Democrat. Like that's
she's smart, but she's still blonde.
Yeah.
I want her to be pretty, but she also knows what's going on. Like she was right in that very electable medium that you would need for someone like that.
Right. And yeah, the new founding fathers are going to try to kidnap her to, that like she could just, die in the purge, right. To get her out of the way. And that's where, that's where a lot of the action in the movie happens. Although I will say, I think it was a much better movie because we're not just like following around her and the high level political stuff the whole movie. There is also this whole other strand of the movie that's just about like, ordinary people. I guess like, middle class, but like not in the, but like in this sort of like they own a store and it's not in a very good neighborhood kind of way.
Exactly. Like they're a business person. They own their own business. They're trying to get by in America today, but not a big business, not a well-to-do business, kind of struggling business that's going to get the shit looted out of it on goddamn purge night.
What would happen every purge night? Yeah.
Yeah, and he just lost his purge insurance the day before, and that's why he's sitting on the roof because they pulled his purge policy.
Right. That's right.
I did like the extra insurance policy that the father in the Forever Purge, by paying all the farmhands on the day of the purge, like giving them a handful of money and being like, thanks for all your work this year, safe purge. They're kind of being like, don't kill us.
Yeah. It's definitely the purge equivalent of the pizza party in the break room.
It's like at the end of every year, you get a Christmas bonus that's a pittance compared to what your company made. And they're like, hey, come back next year.
Yeah, no need for a union here. Look what we just did for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's true. So, okay. The fourth one is the First Purge.
The First Purge, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's 2018. This one feels a little prescient. Like sometimes I'm because I watch these all afterwards. You're like, so this isn't yet George Floyd. This isn't yet the height of Black Lives Matter, although that really starts in like 2013.
Yeah.
But it kind of feels like it could have come out that year. Some of the purges feel like they kind of picked the most upset bit of America like 2 years before it happens and focuses in on that.
Yeah, in this case, I guess it was like, because like the real sort of intense version of, I mean, not that it was anything like what happened in 2020, but like the previously most intense version of Black Lives Matter was like 2013, 2014. That's so the fact that they picked something that was like a little bit longer ago than in some of these other cases actually made it feel prescient, because then it's like, the real, like the real version of it was going to be 2020. So yeah, it's so in the First Purge, we're doing the pilot program for the Purge. There's it is kind of funny that it's 2018 and they're doing this sort of social and political breakdown stuff, and they're still sort of reaching for Occupy Wall Street as what that looks like literally one of the signs people are hoisting in one of the protests the society is breaking down is "We are the 99%."
Exactly.
But the new founding fathers have been elected, and they're trying to roll this out in
it actually takes them 5 years in the timeline. They're in charge for 5 years before they get us to be like, oh, okay, we can purge.
Yeah, okay, that is interesting, right? So there's like a full presidential term with without doing this, and there is a point in the dialogue where one of the NFFA guys says, well, we exhausted all the other options. So this I'd be fascinated to know what their other ideas were, but like this at least wasn't their first idea.
Like 2 other ideas. We thought about maybe raising taxes, then we asked our dad for money, and now we're at a purge. I give them credit for at least being like, they didn't just get elected on purge. Like they got elected and then they brought us purge.
Yeah. Well, once they got that second term mandate, they really felt like they could do the purge now. But yeah,
just do it.
Even then, they're rolling it out slowly. It's a pilot program. It's just not even in all of New York City. It's just in Staten Island.
And it's a pay to play. So they're incentivizing people to stay by giving them money and more money if they kill people.
Yeah. So you get $5,000 just for being willing to stay in Staten Island that night, even if you're holed up in your house. And they never actually say how much it is, but they say several times, and you'll get more money if you participate. And so everybody gets the tracking chip. So you get your 5,000 because, make sure you didn't, sneakily get on a bus to Brooklyn and, try to claim that you were still there. But everybody is, it's still, but they also give people, these contact lenses to put on if they're going to actually purge.
Yeah, like Fremen-eyed spice
contact. Yeah, exactly.
And it's 2013 in the timeline. So like 2013, we have Wi-Fi enabled contact lenses. Okay.
Yeah. It is like weirdly high tech, like compared to everything else that exists in this world at this time. That really feels like, be like a detail from futuristic science fiction, which this is not in any way otherwise, right? Like all the rest of all of the movies much later in the timeline don't feel like they have the kind of technological development where you'd have those contact lenses.
Exactly. And that's why it sticks out.
It's like, oh wow, okay.
But in a movie where you're just constantly going, okay, you're just like, all right, next fact.
Yeah. And they do look creepy while people are wearing them, right? Because they're like a little glowy, so that's kind of a nice touch. The interviews with the like NFFA, I don't know, screeners where they're asking people if they're angry, are pretty creepy. Like I like those.
Yes, those are well done.
Yeah. It is and you do have you mentioned the actor from The Wire in the second movie. I mean, in some ways this feels like actual characters for The Wire in this movie, because like they've got a lot of people are involved in some way or another in this like big enough drug gang that like you have the kingpin who lives really well and doesn't know the names of the people who run his corners for him, which is a plot point in the movie. And the way they talk about the corners and all that stuff is very, is very Wire-esque, but So in this, so you have lots of people have left, but they're offering enough money just to stay that most people are staying. But, and I mean, this is kind of nice because this part does feel very real, that like when they're like, okay, go nuts, crime, right? Go for it, guys. Have fun. Right. That like, yeah, there are like a few psychos who do, but like by and large, most people are like, okay, well, I guess we'll have like a block party we need a permit for.
Yeah. Or they like, I'm going to rob an ATM.
Yeah. That's like exactly right. That's like, yes, sure. That's like a normal person. Like, yeah, that's something you would actually do.
I want to get some money tonight, like, or looting or your basic crime level. Nobody jumps to murder, but obviously the whole plot, they kind of stalk the forest and they put in some like schizophrenic person, who is like clearly mentally disabled, who really just wants to kill. And
Skeletor is this.
That's such a weird choice of character name.
It is. But yes,
I watched the closed captioning and it kept saying Skeletor, and I'm like, huh.
Yeah, Skeletor is a mentally ill junkie who you already see being very violent and erratic earlier in the movie before the purge starts. And when the purge starts, he really goes nuts. There's a whole Nightmare on Elm Street homage going on. He's got the like knife, like the Freddy Krueger like knife fingers essentially. And there's even a scene where he's walking through the alley and he's scraping the finger knives against some tubes. That's like very much like Freddy with his knives against the furnace and in those movies. And yeah, he is like genuinely crazy and scary. But by and large, most people aren't, like, I mean, in a way, it's like a little bit like, I don't know, feels like a sort of argument with like some like super religious person, who's like, oh, if you didn't believe in God, why wouldn't you just be constantly like murdering and raping people? And like, oh my God, would you? Right? That's like, are you, like that's that's like a amazing thing to confess about yourself, right? That like fear of hell is the only thing stopping you from doing this. It's like, yeah, most people aren't actually about to start like murdering their neighbors randomly if they're not going to get arrested for it.
Yes, they made murder legal. They didn't make it compulsory.
Yes.
Like, it's very interesting to think about that, how some people are like, the only thing keeping you from doing something is because it's illegal. And I do also think it's interesting to note that this is in a major society where most of the people are choosing which laws they want to be beholden to anyway. There are people dealing drugs if they want to be dealing drugs. There are people already killing people. Like, they don't give a shit. They don't operate in the world in which these laws are laws anyway. So kind of trying to use them to test that is silly. You just assume that they're violent because they're lawless, whereas they're like, we don't entirely agree with your laws, so we just operate in our own world.
Yeah, totally. And I will say, like, within, obviously, even by the standards of a Purge movie, a very unrealistic premise, even within that, like, I mean, or just, I don't know, maybe not more unrealistic, but maybe just like a little bit harder to suspend disbelief about the like larger premise, because it's like, wait a second, everybody's just going along with, okay, that's but it's like not like this has existed for 20 years and people don't question it, right? But like, no, this is the first year and people are being like way too blasé about it for the most part. I mean, even the protesters aren't like, the protesters like is given like the tone of like somebody protesting something now, right? Not like, we just introduced this.
Like, I disagree with your thoughts on this thing versus like, we're killing people.
Yeah. But within that, yes, the fact that most people are not going with the program feels very realistic. It also feels very realistic that the actual gangsters in the movie, by and large, aren't like along the lines of what you were just saying. They're not like, okay, awesome, right? We're going to like run wild in the streets. They're like, ooh, I don't know what's up with this. This is a weird, unpredictable development that could be bad for business. Let's like hunker down and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And there was a question in the chat a while ago Oh, okay. Also, handsome head injury. Yeah, I think they're worth watching. I think they're all like. I mean, I'm not gonna. We can talk about this maybe more at the end. I'm not gonna like go nuts talking about how, you know, like in terms of like overall like how amazing they are as movies or whatever. But like they're all very fun and very watchable.
Oh yeah, and none of them are longer than an hour and a half, especially in a world right now where most movies, even the questionable ones, are 2.5, 3 hours. You're not investing a lot of time. You're just kind of taking a ride.
Yeah. In a world where every shitty Marvel movie is the length of The Godfather, like this is like these are all like super reasonable length. So yeah, that is definitely a nice
Very
thing.
well said.
Rory asked, I'm curious what they think about the conflict between the institutional NFFA fascists and the sort of yeoman Nazi militias in the Forever Purge.
Yeah.
I mean, it did seem like there's a little bit of wiggle room for interpretation here, but like it was very explicit that the NFFA was bringing in mercenaries because they're compared in dialogue to Blackwater, and there's something about some of them being Russian. So the Wagner Group, they bring in the Wagner Group to Staten Island to start killing people. But as far as the other fascist militias here, there's like the actual KKK. Like first there's like a biker gang with some like vaguely clannish imagery, but then like there's like actually guys in KKK robes that are like splattered with blood. So one of the creepier images in the movie, riding around the back of a truck. So it's like, yeah, those are we supposed to believe? I think the implication is that those were also, there was also some like pretty direct collusion between those groups and the NFFA, that they were like calling them in and telling them to come here, like they were the mercenaries. But I suppose the movie never really spells that out. So it's possible that these were just like, people who enjoy violence and went to where the violence is.
For me, it felt like they were kind of reacting to, the Bobert Party people, all of these people that are infiltrating, that are gaining access to the Republican Party. And if we look at the new founding fathers as the Republican Party that kind of takes over the Purge America, the implication in the last one, the Forever Purge, and what will be visualized in the already greenlit next Purge, is that like they've imploded themselves, just like we've imploded the United States, and it's now completely run by this violent hatred that can't be contained to a single day, because it was never really about a single day. These people are always teaming for purification and feel that they are literally better than other people around them. So I thought that was kind of an allusion to the like, the new founding fathers think they have all the power and they will lose it to these neo-Nazi Yeoman groups because there's just enough of them to take over. And, most of these rich people can't fight for themselves anyway.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of, so let's talk about the Forever Purge because this is really where it felt like the first Purge is kind of transitional, and the fact that you do have these, alt-right kind of militias definitely show, and there's the actual line of dialogue about pussy grabbing, that like those are obviously like reflective of Trump era stuff, but like
and I think like showing that in the mercenaries wearing that costumes, it made people who don't wear it as a costume feel like they could come out on the Purge night, which is kind of what Trump did with that pussy grabbing comment, that like, oh hey, come out into the light with me.
Right. Yeah. So the Forever Purge is the one that's like, okay, this is just an outright Trump era one, both because we
kind of like Cowboy Purge.
Yeah. We've kind of switched from like what's going on really more or less throughout the first four movies is that, the Purge is targeted at poor people and maybe kind of poor Black people in particular, especially with the first Purge. But this is the Forever Purge. It's like, it's all about immigration, there's like this huge focus on how, I mean, we start out the movie following around an undocumented immigrant, and this is, this is all about like xenophobia about that. It's all bottom up, like grassroots stuff. And yeah, so the meaning of the Forever Purge, as you just alluded to, is that there's this like faction of people who are like, no, screw the NFFA. We're not just going to do one day. Like we want to keep doing this, right? Like after the sirens have sounded for the purge being over. And they end up, the NFFA can't control them. They end up taking over everything. And actually, like, I guess by the end of the movie, there's like a full scale civil war between these people and the NFFA government. And I don't know when. Okay, so it was obviously out at the beginning of 2021. So it's a little bit, I guess it's a little bit prescient in that same way that you were talking about with the Black Lives Matter stuff with the First Purge, because it's like this in a lot of ways felt like it could have been a movie that was written after January 6th and kind of reflected like certain kinds of liberal anxieties about that it's like there's this sort of like dangerous energies of the right-wing base that like the politicians can't necessarily control.
And it literally ends with our characters fleeing to another country for safety.
Yes.
Which is something I feel like a lot of my liberal friends have been like, I don't know if I'm going to just have to move to New Zealand or something.
New Zealand is fun. Usually the classic thing is to say Canada. That like
dream big here.
Yeah. Yeah. People always be like, it's like, oh, if, whatever, it's 2004, if Bush wins, I'm going to move to Canada. And it's like, it always, which always felt so ridiculous. It's like, Canada doesn't just have like open borders for Americans, right? Like that, it's not just like any American who feels like moving there is just like, oh yeah, no, come on in, man. Like, here's a job and Canadian citizenship, no problem.
Yeah. To you, a cashier at Walgreens. Come on. Which again, it's kind of like
it's actually kind of hard to immigrate to Canada. Like, and then once you do, like, like you need to find a job. Like they're not just.
Yeah, well, they start to talk about in the Handmaid's Tale, like the current season of the Handmaid's Tale, like the effect of that actual exodus into another country, how difficult that is. How the country can get resentful and start fighting, and we're the immigrants. But it is funny how this particular one is so on the nose that it has them end with like crossing over into Mexico with the assistance of Native Americans. Like, oh wow.
Yeah, look, whatever you want to say about what's good and bad about any of these movies, there's no subtlety.
No.
You're
not missing the point here. We're gonna get it through your head.
Yes. They're not gonna be like, well, we're just gonna gently imply some stuff, like you.
Which is kind of good because some of the violence that it exhibits and some of the behaviors that it shows could be like the Joker, could be seen as glorification. But every single one of those characters gets it in the end, and they are not subtle about what they're trying to say in these movies. So at least there's that.
That's true. Yeah. Although, I mean, I don't know. I also think like the liberal reaction to the Joker was really weird because it's like that movie felt to me like it was pretty on the nose about what its message was too. That it's like they had like literally, there's the scene where, the Joker is like trying to get the records or whatever at Arkham, and like he's freaking the guy out. He's like, the city has mental health services. He's like, oh no, they cut the budget for that. Like that's it's like there does seem to be some pretty obvious messaging about root causes stuff going on in that movie. But that said, I do also get that like it's sort of the movie is basically in a way, I mean, it's got all that, but it also feels like it's very on the side of people, who are like have had it and are doing violent chaos, and there's or at the very least, it's like much more prone to like be like, oh yeah, I'm totally, it's like the the people, which you do also get with like almost every movie where people are doing
Oh yeah, well, like remember when Trainspotting came out, and there were so many people who were saying like, "Oh, this glorifies heroin chic lifestyle," and you're like, "Did you see the movie?"
Yeah, that was I mean, I always thought it's like, man, if they really wanted to do those like anti-drug assemblies in school, if they really want to be effective, they just show you Trainspotting, because like, yeah, the whole thing with the baby, and I mean, it's this is that is such a brutal depiction of what heroin does to people.
It was just a sad coincidence that it came out in a point in time where fashion was so into models being thin that people who didn't see the movie and only saw McGregor were like, "Oh, he's hot," and you're like, "You are not paying attention."
Yeah, right. No, that's fair. It's, and whatever. There are people. Yeah, I mean, it's like, even like, yeah, it's all the stuff. I remember seeing this interview with Mary Hara about her, whatever her name is, about the director of American Psycho, where she's talking about people being like, coming up to her, be like, "Oh yeah, I am Patrick Babish." She's like, "Okay, do you mean you're like a weird dork, or you kill people?" Right? Yeah. Like,
either way, 10 feet away right now, please.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I guess people also like seeing themselves, or people that they
seeing their id, maybe, like,
yeah, no, I think so, right? So it's like, yeah, so it's like sort of like, why it's like, yeah, there are people who like love, who like actually join the Marines, who love Full Metal Jacket, or who gangsters who like gangster movies where the last half hour of every movie is about
people, people who glorify Scarface but seem to have never seen the ending of Scarface.
It's like Bart Simpson, talking about when his grandpa asked him if he's ever read the boy who cried wolf. He's like, skimmed it, boy cries wolf, has a few laughs, I forget how it ends.
Great story. Yeah, exactly. Ends well for the kid, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I guess what do we think? I mean, this is like, I mean, I think that there's obviously a level on which, like, yeah, message of these movies, as we've been talking about, there's like no, there's like no margin of ambiguity about whatsoever. Like, it is definitely beating you over the head with all of it. It's, like, it's not gonna, like, none of the, I think like some of the characterization is better than others and whatever. I mean, it's like, I don't want to exaggerate.
No, and I think some of the acting, especially in the last one and the first one, were really good.
Yeah. I mean, these are all like, I guess at the end of the day, I would just kind of say, it's like, look, these are all like, not big time commitment. These are all very fun movies. These are all like super watchable movies. Like, what they do, like, you kind of know what you're signing up for when you start one of them, and it like always delivers it.
It's like a Fast and the Furious,
Yes. Yeah.
You're gonna get good action in it. You're gonna get good violence. It's gonna be an hour and a half.
Yeah, and like in the case of The Purge, if like, you probably will enjoy it a little bit more if you're a leftist, because like, you're definitely being catered to here. This is like, these are movies about evil conservatives and rich people who who want to kill poor people and tend to, in one way or another, get their comeuppance.
Yeah, it's a little bit like was it Portrait of a Promising Young Woman, or Very Promising Young Woman, where it's like a revenge fantasy, where you're like, oh yeah, I like what I'm seeing because I would want for this to happen in this way.
Right. Yeah. No, that sounds right.
And it's not too challenging. I think in the series of like genre films where like horror has multiple movies that'll be in a whole franchise, I think it's pretty watchable compared to some franchises. Like, I definitely would watch all of these before I would watch all of the paranormal films. Like, it's shot better. You get really good action scenes. You get good camera work. Yeah.
Fair enough. I agree with that. I mean, look, if they, like, when the 6th movie comes out, I'm definitely going to see it.
Yes, ditto. Exactly. I'm not this far in and going to miss the 6th one.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I guess Andy also made this movie night extravaganza thing. I know
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
often on Movie Night Extravaganza. I love chatting it up with those guys. I did a guest stint in the month of October that you can find on YouTube to stream now, where I took over for Conan because he was going on tour with his band. So there's about 3 horror movies that you can watch me chat up about with the guys. It's just a really fun show. They're actually streaming right now about The Exorcist.
Yeah. And there's also something here for it says the
yeah, this is a podcast that I'll be launching. So it's the end of October right now. It should be launching by the beginning of December. Kind of like we've been talking all night about how you judged you didn't want to watch The Purge, and so you just kind of avoided it for a really long period of time. Then you finally watched it and you found out like, hey, it was way more consumable than I thought. I'm doing a series called What If I Don't Like It, where it's a one-on-one with me and another person who may or may not be in the film industry or entertainment adjacent, or just someone who I really think has a great storytelling narrative and they're fun to chat with, where I make them watch a movie that they have never seen, that they have decided they would hate. And I try and find one that they would like. So like they'll tell me, I hate everything that Kevin James was in, or I hate all comedies, or oh God, I just don't want to watch anything from the 80s. And I'll find something, we'll watch it together, and hopefully I'll bring them around, but maybe I won't.
Nice. Yeah, that's a really fun concept.
Thank you.
And finally,
this is the Starwell Foundation. I'm a voice actor in the Starwell Foundation. Obviously, telling you how I speak Russian got me into The Purge. My Russian accent is in full force in the Starwell Foundation, where I play a telepathic Russian villain in a world where villains and superheroes exist. And there's a foundation that helps sick children meet superheroes, except this foundation has started to ask, kids want to meet villains. And our main character is in charge of setting up those meet and greets between villains and little sick kids. I play one of the villains. I also play one of the podcast hosts of a true crime podcast, a show within the show that talks about the supervillains and the stuff that they do in real life.
Nice. All right. Well, on that note, I think we are going to wrap it up for tonight.
Just at about an hour and a half, like the movies themselves.
Exactly.
Love it.
Nice. All right. Stay safe.